Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the kitchen. Today we're going to make Sylvia's grits. Sylvia Woods was the owner and restaurateur for Sylvia's in Harlem for decades, a most famous restaurant in Harlem. And one of her favorite things to serve was grits. And this is her recipe. Now, grits is actually made from hominy. Hominy is a type of corn. It's a big fat corn that has a bit of an indent on it. And when it's made into grits, it's ground. It's a bit coarse, but also it's treated with an alkali, sometimes lye, and that helps make it really soft and tender. Now today, I actually have a package of instant grits, Quaker instant grits. Now, of course, we can't use that to make our traditional soul food grits. But I do have this package of yellow cornmeal. Now, when I was growing up, we always had grits, except I never knew that's what it was called. My dad was in the Air Force and was stationed in Biloxi, Mississippi, and made grits all the time, except he called it a wet pancake, and we always had it with maple syrup on top. And maybe he called it a wet pancake to get us to eat it, but we loved it, and it wasn't until recently that I realized what I was actually having was grits. So it should be interesting to try it because I haven't had it in a very long time. So now, the difference between these two, I should be able to use this to make grits, even though it's not the hominy. It is yellow cornmeal, and this should be fine. I'm going to open this up, though, so we can see the difference in the texture of it, so that way we can compare the two. I will be using this to make the grits. A lot of people have this in the cupboard already, especially if you like to make cornbread. And the grocery store actually didn't have any grits. So we have to use what we can get, right? So let's test out this recipe by using just regular old yellow cornmeal. And quite frankly, this is what my father used all the time as well. All right, so just give me a second and I'll open these two and we can compare. So here you can see the actual grits. They're coarser than the cornmeal. This is very fine. This is almost like a flour. And that's what we use to make cornbread with. The grits, I don't know if you can see that. You see how they're big pieces? They're chunky. All right. And of course, this is whiter. This is yellow. The difference in corn, this is hominy, and this is regular corn. So, when you go to the store, if you want to make old-fashioned grits, make sure you get the grits. But if you cannot get them, and of course you don't want to use the instant, get the cornmeal. We can use this as a substitute. And we need 1 cup of it, and this is 1.5 cups. I'm only going to do 1 cup because I just don't want to waste so much of this. And also, that's an insane amount of salt. You know, no offense to Sylvia's, but I can't eat that much salt in my diet. So I'm going to cut down this salt to 1 teaspoon. All right, so then let me get this stuff measured out and we'll start baking it. So here's our 1 cup of grits and our 1 teaspoon of salt. And it's a fairly simple recipe. There's only a couple of ingredients, but you need to keep an eye on it. So when the water's coming to a boil, we're going to slowly pour in our corn. I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit. And now, this is the important part. You have to stir. You need to stir constantly. Okay? Now, you already have lumps. I should have been stirring while I was pouring that in, but I'm holding the camera with the other hand. So if you are making these at home, stir with one hand as you're pouring in the corn. And now I'm going to add in our salt. So I'm going to have to stir quite vigorously to break up all those lumps, and then stir for 10 minutes continuously while this is cooking. So I'm going to stop. I'm sure you don't want to sit here for 10 minutes watching me stir. All right, so it's been 10 minutes. I've been continuously stirring it. I got rid of all those lumps that we had before, thank goodness. And now you want to keep stirring it so you don't get any lumps again, but also if you don't keep stirring it, this is what ends up happening. It starts to explode. And that goes all over your countertop or your stove top. And if you get splattered with that, it's really quite hot and will burn your skin. So make sure you continuously stir this. You can't walk away. All right, so that's 10 minutes standing at the stove, continuously stirring. All right, and you see how smooth that is though? You want to make sure it's really smooth. You don't want lumps. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes. I can take these off. Now remember, grits are really versatile. This could be a savory or a sweet dish. And I'm going to get a serving spoon later. Put it into our bowl. And you could add cheese to it. You could put it on a plate and cover it with a bed of shrimp. Remember our Sean Brock video where he made shrimp and grits? Okay, so you could use, I just use water, but you could use vegetable broth, chicken broth, fish broth if you're gonna have it as a savory item. And sometimes people use milk or some sugar in here too when they're cooking it to make it sweeter. And as I told you, my dad always had it with maple syrup. So I'm going to just put a big old pat of butter right there in the center of it. And get this melting. And then I lucked out. I still have some maple syrup right here in this container. All right, so now I was going to drizzle on some of this beautiful maple syrup. All right, and this would be a perfect breakfast, brunch treat. All that maple syrup. Oh, that looks so good. That was so good. I can't even tell you. It brings me right back to my childhood. I can see my dad standing at the stove stirring the grits, or as he called it, our wet pancake. And it's so absolutely delicious. I ate a whole bunch of it before the butter even melted, and my insides are burning because it was so hot, but it is so good. Oh my God, I can't believe it. I can't even begin to tell you how much I love this, and I really haven't had it in years. So I'm going to start sharing it with my kids so that they enjoy it too. But this is so good. I love it. I'm going to take some more. All right, so it was really easy. I mean, except for the 10 minutes standing at the stove, it's just water. So we had 3 cups of water. I only did 1 cup of grits, but I actually used the yellow cornmeal, and I did 1 teaspoon of salt instead of a tablespoon of salt. That's a bit too much for me. And just stirred it on the stove for 10 minutes with our wooden spoon. Remember that when you're pouring in the cornmeal or the grits, stir it while you're pouring it so you don't get any lumps. Stirred it for 10 minutes, and then I put a very nice pat of butter right on top and poured on some maple syrup, and it's absolutely wonderful. So I love it.